insomma, era tra l'ospite speciale della giornata di oggi, di questo Joomla Day, cofondatore e uno dei firmatari dell'atto notarile avvenuto a New York appunto per la nascita di Joomla. Lo accogliamo con un grande applauso, Mitch Pirtle.
Wow, grande applauso per favore. Benvenuto.
Welcome. This is for you.
Mitch è originario di New York, vive e lavora a Torino attualmente, è coinvolto in un progetto che a noi che siamo musicisti interessa molto.
Sì, ne parlavamo prima, I'm talking about the project of Sunday. Sostanzialmente, appunto, essendo musicisti, io gli ho chiesto che cosa consiste questo progetto. Io gli ho citato, insomma, alcune realtà, per chi è musicista o amici musicisti di voi conosce, possono essere CD Baby o Rubber Nation, e lui mi ha detto questo progetto va oltre, perché la maggior parte dei siti musicali, e mi citava anche la nuova versione di MySpace che sarà disponibile a breve, hanno una sola visione, cioè la visione dei fan. Questo nuovo progetto, adesso gli chiediamo di dire due parole su questo, tende ad andare oltre, cioè a cercare di portare, di creare una realtà che porti direttamente chi fa musica a parlare a rivolgersi direttamente ai tecnici, che ne so, per un mixaggio, per registrare, per fare un mastering, e quindi è di sicuro un qualcosa di innovativo. Can you talk about the project? I explained what we were talking before in the backstage.
First, scusi per mio italiano, io studiamo e oggi mio italiano non bene. So, you know, I'm learning.
Anche quello di Stefano, non è che
really quickly. Right now I'm getting certified to coach American football in Italian, and it's hysterical. I love it. So yes, Soundday's focus is purely pointing at the professionals in the industry. For the last 100 years, the musicians have not had open access to the professionals because the major, record companies were keeping them apart. And thanks to the internet and innovation with digital technology, digital media advancement, it's much easier for the artist to make contact with the professional, the sound engineer, the producer, the promoter, the label. And so our dream at Soundday is to build a collaborative platform where all of these professionals who were used to just sitting in the studio and waiting for a band to show up and getting paid, now they have a way to find the musicians that make the kind of music that they specialize in, for example. So the focus now is really on connecting the artist with the rest of the professionals in the industry.
Sostanzialmente quello che, in due parole, quello che si diceva prima, si tralasciano finora, lui diceva da circa 1000 anni ormai la musica, i musicisti non hanno mai avuto la possibilità di relazionarsi con i professionisti della musica, ci sono sempre stati degli intermediari e loro hanno pensato a questa strada diversa che esclude le etichette discografiche, le major, ma anche le etichette di vendita, e mette direttamente a contatto il professionista. Se c'è un produttore, lui mi diceva prima, che si occupa di pop, grazie a questa struttura può contattare, o dei musicisti possono contattare lui e dire ok, io produco questo tipo, sono interessato a produrre te, cosa che naturalmente prima poteva essere. Quindi complimenti per questo, in bocca al lupo per questo progetto di Soundday.
Ha detto anche, ve lo traduco per chi non ha capito, ha detto anche che tutti i musicisti esperti di Joomla che sono qui in sala, di rivolgersi a lui, gli verrà fatto un contratto discografico subito.
No, non credo.
Non capisco bene l'inglese. Non capisco bene l'inglese, scusate.
Ok, please.
Vi lasciamo a Mitch Pirtle.
Wow, it's been a while since I've spoken about Joomla. Again, apologies for my English. I will try to speak slower. I get excited and go too fast. My other language option was Swiss German, so I'm pretty sure everyone here is happy I chose English. So, about me. As discussed, I was involved in the founding of Joomla. Actually, I date back to the prehistoric years of Mambo. And back then I was Mambo Mitch, which rolled off the tongue much easier than Joomla Mitch. It's not the same now. But I was involved in the forming of Joomla and Open Source Matters, and was on the initial board with Andrew Eddy and Brian Tiemann, who hopefully is somewhere in the UK watching me on the internet right now. This is for you, Brian. We're like brothers. We love each other dearly, but if you keep us together long enough, we'll kill each other. I'm very active in open source software and have been for a very long time now that I think about it. And I've been involved in a few projects. Now when I go to the open source conferences, I can't sit in one table for long because I need to go say hi to everyone from Postgres and go tease the guys from Drupal. And came here from New York City last year in May. It's been a fantastic experience here in Turin. I love Turin. My wife and children love Turin, and I'm very proud to be a part of this community. It's a wonderful city. It's the truth. So, yes, I am a New Yorker, and I will try to speak slower. Yeah, as explained earlier in the introduction, I'm the CTO at SoundDay Music, which is actually the reason we're here and the reason we landed in Turin. That whole story is probably too long for this session and not relevant, but it's a fun story. And nothing but startups. I've been really focused on nothing but startups for years and have no intention of working for large companies ever again. Now, personal note, but you've probably seen me barreling down the street on my longboard and a helmet, which apparently no one else in Turin does. And I understand when you go like this and you say things to me in Italian, I actually know what you're saying now. All right, about this talk. The focus of this talk is about the current state of content in Joomla 3.0, which released earlier this week, and also talk about the history behind the proposal for something called UCM, Unified Content Model. And what does the Unified Content Model mean to Joomla and the current status? So, kicking things off. Content in Joomla right now lives in COM content. And that means it lives in one table in your database. The challenge there is that if that data does not fit, if you're wanting to write a particular type of content that is not an article, then that data will not fit in that table, which typically is JOS content. JOS articles depends on how you're playing around with the framework. So what ends up happening is you duplicate, actually, I'll do all three. You duplicate many things because the whole point of Joomla as a content management system becomes very narrow when content has to be defined and live in this one sandbox, if you will. It has to be a certain type, and that makes life difficult. However, late last year, in December, when the rest of us were preparing for Christmas, Louis Landry and the team that he works with made a proposal called, it was the email, I believe, was called a new Unified Content Model. And it discussed a new way of looking at how the framework in Joomla can access content. In his announcement, he also pointed everyone to an open repository on GitHub. I screwed up. I'm showing how long it's been since I've spoken. Show me your hands. How many of you are developers? All right, now, how many of you are not developers? Okay, I just need to know when people start falling asleep if I should be offended or not. So this project opened up on GitHub, and so I thought I'd make it a little simpler. A lot of people have asked, so what does UCM mean for us? Well, right now, your content is getting squished So it's nice and flat and goes in this one table. Wouldn't it be better if your content was free and allowed to do whatever it wanted? All right, seriously. So what this means to your data model, one of the biggest headaches is when you, actually I'm going to jump ahead of myself. When you start building custom content, I'm hunching over. When you start building custom content in Joomla, you're forced to either hack the core or move your content out of content and call it a component. And that means you need search filters, you need all of these other things to happen. You need a new interface to manage your content, despite Joomla already having an interface to manage content. So there are several things that you end up duplicating as a result of this work. Wow. So one of the things that they've added to UCM that I think is great is it leverages it's hooked into a cache library. So at your decision, you can pre-cache your content so that the very first time you reference a content item, it gets cached. That's extremely important when you start building custom content types that are rich and need to be searched. One thing I'd like to discuss real quickly, when you start splitting your data apart, it becomes harder and harder to find things. And the UCM does something different. The UCM basically says your COM content driven table, right, JAWS content, that table stays the same. But then you have many small tables around it that carry the specific data to your content type. So I could create a special content type called staff. Staff could have a title and an intro and a body text. Also have first name, last name, email, social media links, and so on. That data would all be kept in a separate table next to the content table itself. And that's one step away from a query standpoint. We call that a star schema. Instead of having, here's my content, here's my staff, here are my blog posts, here's this, here's that. You keep all of the main information, because everything you publish is going to have a name, who made it, when it was made, who can access it. So you keep that information in the center of your data model. And all of the individual pieces that are specific to a staff or a blog post or whatnot can then go into the side tables. That makes scale and performance much, much better. But more importantly, and far too few people mention this, is that it simplifies the effort for the developers. Something that I noticed, people talk about their tools. This is super fast. I can store 200 million of these on one server. Mine plugs into the cloud. And not enough people are talking about how hard it is for the developers to use something or not. So the UCM is also attempting to make life easier for those of us that are writing the PHP code to make these websites work, because it's easier for us to add new kinds of content to the platform. In a sense, it turns Joomla into a polymorphic content management system. Historically, other content management systems, like Drupal, for example, came up with a concept called CMF, Content Management Framework, right? And the problem was the designs that they had to do ended up becoming not just a performance problem and caused a lot of pain for high-traffic websites, but it caused a lot of pain for the developers too. They found themselves wrapped in the arms of the octopus. And so I really believe that UCM is the approach that we need to take in modern times so that we can have websites that publish more than just your traditional article. One other thing that UCM introduces is a way for gaining access methods to content. And that might be a model for the core so that we can simplify access checks for our content. I know that's been a problem in the past. The new ACL in Joomla 3.0 has definitely had a major upgrade over what we've had in the past. And this basically takes that one more step. Yeah, that's the real takeaway, the most important point about UCM. You can now add custom content types without chopping up the core. Now, the most high-profile website I've probably ever built with Joomla was one for MTV, which I believe is still the most high-trafficked Joomla-powered site on the internet. It got 60 million page views in 1 week, and it was all teenage girls. Very tough crowd. And the difficulty with that site was that it was all custom content. There was no articles in the entire platform. We had quizzes, poems, lyrics to songs, journal entries were maybe the closest you could see to content. We ended up using a star schema, which is probably where Lewis got the idea, and we had to do everything else the hard way. This was when Joomla 1.5 was kind of but not quite finished yet. So if I had UCM back then, my life would have been a lot easier. We diverged from the core of Joomla far enough that we found it impossible to come back. And in the process, forked Joomla to a point that we were no longer calling it Joomla. We just called it the framework. All right. Now we'll get to what they say. Let's get to brass tacks. Can you see that up there? It says updated 6 months ago. Boo. So now what? We have this great idea. That's the problem with UCM right now. So I'd like to end that by asking all of you if any of you are involved in customizing content for your clients' websites, or you like building custom applications and custom components for Joomla-powered websites. Look at UCM and see if you want to get involved. I've asked around, and it seems like the idea started pretty firmly, but then got extremely quiet extremely fast. So I'm not sure what the current status of UCM is. I just know that it has a tremendous promise for the Joomla, both the CMS and the framework, but I do believe that it's going to need more people to get involved to reach a certain point of usability. So I'm not sure if I'm following the format of this event. Here's where I typically just take open questions. Is that okay? All right. If you raise your hand, I can do my best to hear you. Wow, now don't all talk at once. I have people standing up, and I'm not sure if they're getting my attention or just wanting to leave. All right, so we don't have any questions? Excellent. That was quick.
Le possiamo fare in italiano?
Yeah, I can understand a bit.
Se volete farle anche in italiano. Ecco, ci sono delle domande da sotto.
Hi, I work for a web agency, and we need what you're discussing about of what we call the CCK, Content Construction Kit.
Yep.
We use a Sublod, that is a component, custom component developed by a team, French team, and we hope that Joomla will integrate it in the core, because Sublod is a hack of the Joomla core, and this is not a good thing.
Yep.
And this is our problem, and we hope for the future.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, that's why we were talking about what I could speak about here. One other topic that we discussed was whether I could talk about my experience bolting Joomla on top of MongoDB, which is something I've been doing for years now. But in my opinion, UCM needs a spotlight shown on it so that it gets enough attention, so that there's some focus. I believe that a big weakness of all of the content management systems out there is the inability to handle custom content. I actually used the wrong acronym earlier. I mentioned CMF, which is actually an old Zope and Plone term. I don't know, how many of you even heard of Zope or Plone? Yeah, right. It was the Jimi Hendrix of content management systems. It was 10 years ahead of everyone else, and so no one knew it and no one needed it. And Plone is one of the few CMS platforms that uses an object database. And so Plone could do the kind of stuff we're wishing we could do with our Joomla sites and WordPress sites and Drupal sites now. But yeah, I still believe that the UCM is the cleanest approach to getting what we want. First, it has to be implemented at the framework level, and then the CMS needs to be made UCM aware. At that point, your Joomla website actually becomes a publishing engine, and you can call all kinds of information out of it, even analytics and reporting data, all kinds of stuff.
Qualche altra domanda? Se no, salutiamo. C'è qualcuno che ha alzato la mano?
No, non mi sembra che ci sia nessuno. Salutiamo Mitch.
So they're,
Okay.
they're sufficiently asleep.
Where's the last? Do you have your contacts, maybe?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this one last slide.
C'è un'ultima slide.
Yeah, and I want this one up for a few minutes. I'm going to upload my deck to SlideShare because I'm trying to network with PHP developers in Turin. I found one. I'm hanging out with a bunch of Python guys. Help me. All right, thank you very much.
Cioè, se volete rispondere all'appello di Mitch, insomma, quelli sono i contatti per contattarlo.
Skype him.
So, Mitch, thank you very much for being with us.
Grazie Mitch.
Take care, God bless.
Thank you. Grazie.
Ancora un applauso a Mitch Pirtle.